Hi everyone, my name is Essen and you're listening to the Brown History Podcast. On today's episode, we have a special guest, Siddhartha Khosla. He is a six-time Emmy-nominated film and television composer. He did the music for This Is Us, Only Murders in the Building, and many more. He also did the music for the movie Goldmohar, which is out now. But the coolest thing on Siddhartha's long resume and list of accomplishments is that he is the lead singer of the band Goldspot, which is such an underrated band. And if you haven't heard their music, do yourself a favor and check them out. And check out the film Gulmohar, which just came out. And before we get started, if you're enjoying Brown History Podcast and the Instagram page and everything in between, and you want to help out and you want to support, which we could really use the help, do consider being a patron. Just visit brownhistorypodcast.com. It's really simple and your help goes such a long way. Anyways, let's get started. And here we go. I met Rahul a while ago, and I read the movie script before the movie was actually made.
Oh, nice.
One of my naive suggestions was that I didn't understand, like I couldn't like the character Adi, the young kid. I'm like, he's rich, he's comfortable. Why is he complaining? But
Wow.
it's very interesting to see how music makes him more likable. So when you're making music in your projects, is empathy something you look out for?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that question. You didn't get that from the other questions.
No,
Pretty good.
that was on me.
That was all you. You had that one in the canon already. I don't consciously try to bring empathy. Like, I don't consciously try to make characters likable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. And it's a great question because philosophically, like, that's an interesting thing to approach music for as a score for something, is to make something lovable and likable and relatable. But that's never the motivation, if that answers the question. Like, I think for me, it's I'm driven by writing sort of more universal themes, and like a few themes that we can come back to over and over again. I love writing themes. Like, it's just what I do best, is melody and theme. And so inevitably, I don't write themes that are just character driven. Often it's more bigger picture. So
Right.
if I'm linking a character with the same theme to another character, maybe that's what's making him or her more likable or relatable, because I'm putting them all together in a way, and I attach them to each other in a way by theme, and so maybe that subtly does something. I don't know.
So usually when I start off an episode, I usually go back to the history. Since the page is called Brown History, I usually start with the person's history. And with you, I wanted to know. No, I think you were born in America, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I want to know from where did your parents originate from, and how did they make the big move to America, and what was that process like for them?
So where are you, by the way? Are you in LA?
I'm in Toronto.
You're in Toronto. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So my parents came to the U.S. In the late 70s from India. They were in Delhi. They lived in Delhi, and they came to New Haven, Connecticut, to go to law school and med school at Yale.
Smart people.
Yes, very. And then excuse me. And then I was born. And at the time they came here with like $8, because there was foreign currency reserve, or lack thereof. Sorry. So you couldn't, you only money you could really exchange was like when you get to like JFK Airport in New York, like whatever you could, there was like a finite amount of, rupees.
They were limited.
You were limited. And so, they were working full time. My dad was shelving books at the law library and going to school for the rest of the day. My mom was working in the hospital, and then school rest. So they saved up enough money to send me back to India, and I was raised by my grandparents for the first couple of years. And so I lived in India until my parents felt like they had, set their feet a little bit, and then I came back. Yeah.
This is before. This is like long distance, very expensive phone calls.
Yeah, these are the long distance phone calls that when you called, like you heard an echo for like 20 seconds.
So did you feel the, I guess, the absence of your parents at such a young age?
I was so little. It was, it clearly, it was a formative stage in my life. So it had some impact without me knowing, probably without me really knowing, but, yeah, my mom would send me a cassette tape, with her voice on it and sing me songs. And,
Uh-huh.
and that's how we exchanged. That's how I heard her voice. They would send me these tapes. And then I would record over that same tape, and my grandparents would send it back to the US, and my mom and dad would record again and send it back, because it was like $8 or $6. No, it was like $20 or something to make a long distance phone call. It was
Right.
stupid. It was
You
stupid.
still have those cassettes?
My mom has it, yeah, and she's hidden it from me because she knows I'll lose it.
So your mom sang you songs, so that means music was a big thing in your household.
Yeah, and my first experience in recorded music was listening to my mom sing on those tapes.
What music were you listening to as a child after you
Um,
moved to America?
it was a lot of Hindi music. Like my parents recognized at a young age that I could sing, and so my mom would I was the kid that would sing bhajans at temple on Sundays. Like it was me in front of all these aunties and uncles, and so I would listen to like Muhammad Rafi, Kishore Kumar, Lata
Wow.
Mangeshkar. Like those are that's how I learned to sing, because I learned to sing their songs.
And they
Um,
stayed in Connecticut.
that was in Jersey at that point. So yeah, I came back. No, I came back to Connecticut. Yeah, you're right. And then Connecticut, Florida, Jersey. It was all over the place, and
When
all based on like where my parents could get work.
Okay, and what year, what decade were you in New Jersey?
80s. I think that's fascinating too. I think that's part of the story. I don't, but
Yeah,
yes, let's stick to music. What's up?
yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about Goldstop.
Gold
Goldspot.
Spot.
How did you form the band? Because I mean, your parents worked hard, sacrificed, put a lot of effort into settling down, and then here you are, and you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna form a band." That's like the
Right.
biggest, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah.
a thing you don't tell your parents.
Right. Um, it's interesting because it's because of my mom that I sang, and she was like really like made me sing and pushed me to sing, and then when I wanted to do it, I remember they were a little reluctant, not little, they were very reluctant, because they just know how tough this industry is, and they know like it's not the easiest route. It's a high failure rate, it's like all this stuff that will freak out any parent, let alone, and especially Indian parents. Um,
Right.
and but for me, it was always, my dad was always like, if you're gonna do anything, you do it with the pasya, so you
Yeah.
do it
You go
with
all
like,
in.
you go all in. And so then I did it, and then and so I moved to eventually moved to Los Angeles. I had like a job here. I was like working for AT&T Wireless. I worked with kids in gangs. I had like a whole thing I was doing, and then also trying to make my record at night, like, so it was like I worked a full-time job, and then I would go and record every night till like 3 o'clock in the morning with like a friend that was letting me use the studio for free, and then who I eventually made a producer on that album. And that was the album that got me my big break ultimately.
Which album is that? Do you mean Tally of
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah.
Isman? It was a great
Yep.
album.
Thank
Um,
you.
were you the oldest child or were you the firstborn?
Oldest child. Yeah. I have a
Oldest
younger
child. So there's a
sister.
lot more pressure than the rest of the siblings. Where did you get the balls to drop out of school and to do this risky thing that might not go anywhere?
Well, I never dropped out of school. So
I thought I read somewhere that you stopped being a lawyer or you went to law school and you decided you changed your mind.
no, I so I my at the end of college, I thought I was like, okay, I was gonna maybe be a lawyer, and I took the LSAT, and then I ended up canceling my score, and then I never applied to law school. So I finished college, and then did not go to law school. So I never became a lawyer, but I was at one point thinking it might happen. But
Wow.
I think so that was sort of a sign for me to like, hey, maybe I could start my band. And so my best friend from childhood, Sanjay, he and I started Goldspot. And then consequently, Sanjay left the band to go to law school. And then I kept on doing it. And then got signed, and then a lot of work went into it. Years of playing and playing and playing, and then I finally got signed as an artist to Universal. And then that's eventually how like the Indian market in India and like London, all of them heard the music, and that's how that started. And then
Uh-huh.
eventually, after making a few albums, then I started making music for television and film.
Um, was it hard for you to get signed because it's not very often that you see a brown guy being the lead of a band? I mean, you have Young the Giant, but that came years after you, and then you had Corner Shop, but that was in England a while ago. So was it
England's a,
hard for you?
and England's a different scene too, because there's like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it definitely was, because I remember it was like 2003, 4 when I started like playing out in Los Angeles, and we had all these record labels come to see the band perform, because there's a lot of buzz around like this album, and people would come and see us perform. And I remember like hearing from like through my manager, like heads of labels, like one comment once was like, we can't market a brown lead singer this close to 9/11.
Oof. Oof. That's racism again.
That happens. And so those events also like sort of strengthen you. And I know that I took a lot of like, I think I that stuff like doesn't get to me, like that never really got to me, like um
Do you
that
know
stuff never.
why? Do you know why it never got to you? Because
Why?
no, I'm asking, because for a lot of people, it gets to them, like it holds them back, and it's amazing to see someone that takes that and turns it into strength. So do you know where you got that power from?
I think probably from my mom and dad. I mean, just like they were both sort of trailblazers in many ways, like they left their, just like our parents. I mean, they left their homeland to start a new life here. They went through so much difficult times setting up a life in a whole new place. They dealt with their share of, their share of discrimination. And so you and then I saw them make something out of nothing. And
Right.
so when you see someone make something out of nothing, that shows you that like anything is possible. And so I think you sort of you have that to look at as a foundation. And so yeah, I mean, I was so committed to like being a musician, and I was like in singing and being in a band and writing whatever, and then now I write a lot of scores, but like um that, I think the passion for music was just like nothing could take that away. Like you
Hmm.
can whatever, like, like you said that, like whatever. I doubled down at that point.
How did it feel watching your success? You've been nominated for an Emmy. I mean, Emmys. You've been nominated for Emmys. By the way, you've been nominated for an Emmy 6 times in a span
Yeah.
of 4 years, but you don't even have your own Wikipedia page. So I would look into that. But it's kind of full circle that you're making an Indian movie. It's not really a typical Bollywood movie, but it is an Indian movie, and you grew up doing religious songs in temples, and there's a holy sequence in Gulmohar. So it must be full circle for them.
Yeah,
How did it feel now, looking at you now?
it feels great. And like the reason why I started singing in the first place was the way I learned how to sing in the first place was listening to Hindi songs from Hindi films. And so to now go back and now write those same songs for another generation to listen to, uh, is very fitting.
Hmm.
I'm able to sort of take my life's experiences, from my childhood experiences, the good and the bad, um, and my family experiences living in Delhi, and seeing what happened with my family there and my family here, and applying all that stuff to this film, is a very sort of meta experience too, and it feels great. It's a very special feeling.
In around like 2012, you shifted from being in a band to, I mean, the band is still there, but you shifted to becoming a music composer. How did that
Yeah.
shift happen, and how did you know that you were able to compose music? Because I'm assuming they're very different, and I guess you miss out on the performing in front of the audience and that thrill if you were into it or not. So,
Yeah.
it's funny, your dream was to be, I mean, your goal was a band, and then you're still in the same world, but it's kind of changed.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's like you're in my head. It's amazing. You know exactly every issue I've had. Like you've nailed it. You know exactly what it is. Yeah, I mean, my dream was to be lead singer of Goldspot, and Goldspot was going to blow up to be this big thing. And it was what I sort of like. It's just my dream. Like any kid in a band, that's your dream. That's what you want to be, the next U2. You want to be the next
Yeah.
whatever, right?
And you were there. You were pretty much there.
I don't know if I was there. I
You were,
mean,
it's underrated, but it was a pretty good out. It was,
it was a good.
I mean,
I was proud of the work. The albums were great. I think we made great records, and I
I
think we.
think so too.
Oh, thanks, man. I think we were like, and we, and then when my record came out on Mercury, um, in the UK, that record, Telly, it got all this incredible buzz. It was like the Sunday Times was like, this is like, it was like, also would say stuff that was ridiculous, like it was too much praise, it didn't make sense. It was like best band to come out of America in years, and like stuff like that would be said about us, so the expectation was so high. and
Uh-huh.
and then the record came out, and like it flopped basically, because like it was like, it didn't it was in this time when like music was being absorbed in other mediums. All of a sudden it wasn't about the physical record sales anymore. It was like, you know like it was pre-streaming, but it was still like iTunes, and it was like the MP3 market, like all that
Mhm.
stuff. So things as to 2005 was a very tough time for music, and it was like you you were basically losing an entire revenue stream for a record company. Like they weren't making record sales anymore. It wasn't
Mhm.
happening at the same level as it was before. And I remember at that point that like, but at the same time, there was like a whole audience for the film music that was like craving it. And it was awesome. Like we would play sold out shows everywhere, and like go to India and play for like 10,000 people. And so it was like awesome. Right. So in that sense, it was living the dream. But then in terms of like what a record label defined as success, I was not meeting that. And so then I came back to the US because like we had an option to go for another run for another record on Universal. And my manager suggested we get out of the deal and we just leave, because we were getting the sense that the record label was probably not going to invest as much money the second time. And so he's like, you're going to be more successful on your own. Go on your own. So came back, started my own little indie label, and then put out another record on my own. Elephant is Dancing, and then Aerogram. And all those albums got placed in television and film. I had a lot of syncs. And so that's what you call it, syncs. And it's like these songs were being placed in television and film. And so that was building sort of like my name then among producers and directors, and right, like, oh, this is an artist, we can use his music here and there. And then eventually a friend of mine from college called me and he said, "Hey, do you want to come and score the second season of my TV show?" And at the time, I was like, I don't know if I can do it. Like I've been writing music for albums for myself for years. I don't know how to write music to picture. It's a whole other
Mhm.
thing. I'd done
Yeah.
like maybe like I'd done like a Google commercial or like a Target commercial or something, and maybe. And so that was the only experience I had. And so I was like, I can't do it. He's like, no, I know you can do it. And I was like, again, someone that really believed in me and was like, you can do it. And he's like, you can emotionally connect in your music, and I know you can do it to picture. And so I took the gig reluctantly, not thinking I could
Mm-hmm.
actually do it because I was never trained in any of that, And but then it led to like lots of gigs or from like other producers and directors and other producers and directors. And then, then This Is Us obviously put me on the map. And it was that same guy that hired me for This Is Us, my friend from college, Dan Fogelman. And then Only Murders in the Building became a success. So all these, so it was really somebody taking a chance on me, and then that person believing in me before I believed in myself.
Yeah,
And then that,
that guy
like,
changed everything for you.
yeah, I really did. He did. And then it led to this whole other shift. And then all of a sudden there was no time for Goldspot. And it's like, you know, and so then now I have, you know, a bunch of films and shows and things that I do. And so it's really
Is there
rewarding.
is there grief saying goodbye to this other dream, or at least putting it temporarily goodbye?
Not now, but initially so much grief. Yeah. Like I used to, like, if 3 months, if a month went by and I had not performed on a stage, I would get like depressed. Like
Mm.
it would affect me. I would really feel, I could feel it. I would be in a funk. I'd be like, oh my God. Like I could feel the cloudiness. Like I was so used to being on a stage and performing, and it was such a cathartic thing for me. It was therapeutic for me to be up there, and then to not do it all of a sudden, it was devastating. It hurt. Like I was like, oh, I was like, and then I was like, okay, I got to go do it. And I'd go do a show, and I'd be like, oh, fine, that felt good. Now I can get back to this. And then eventually, the space between the shows grew longer and longer and longer and longer. Live shows. Um, because the work grew here in
Yeah.
Hollywood television. And then but then now, like I do perform, and when I do perform now, oh man, I love it. It takes it's a while between it. And now I do a combination of like my scores with I'll have like a full orchestra and we'll do a show. And then also pick up my guitar and then sing a song in the middle of it or something, which is fun.
I mean, the first time when you did music composing, how did you know, like, when your friend asked you, can you do this for me? How did you know, like, you could do it?
Well, there was a lot of I didn't just pick it up and all of a sudden did it. It was like I had to learn it. Like I had to like practice it, and I had to like work on the same scene like 15 times till I got it right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, I can't tell you the number of rewrites I had in that first year. It's just like, I must have written hours and hours of music for like a 20-minute episode for a show, 30 minutes, and um it's like with anything, if you practice it and you do it, you get better, you get better, you get better. I also trust my ability to write music, and I trust my ability to write music that connects. So that's half the battle. If I can, like, that is most of it. Like, I'm saying? Like, I know I can write music, whether it's with lyrics or as a song or as just a piece of music. I know that's something that that's something I do. It's something I've always done. And so, um, uh, and then knowing that, like, if you close your eyes and you listen to it, I can make a connection. And then if I see picture, I'm like, that picture is also helping the music. If the picture's good. And
Uh-huh.
so, you learn, and then you also learn by like rewriting something 50 times. You learn what you did wrong, what you did right, why someone responded to this and not to that. And so now at this point, now I don't really, now I'm not rewriting as much. Very little. I'm writing it and it's like gets good, it's accepted, it's right. So um I also knew that, like, you know it took years of working on projects that weren't ultimately that successful either for
Uh-huh.
me to start appreciating it. Like when This Is Us came along, that thing was like
Yeah.
the hit,
Put you on the map.
biggest show in America. And then all of a sudden I was like, I've spent these years sort of like practicing or honing my craft, and now I had this opportunity, and it's also something I love. And the music I'm making, I can make something that comes from my soul. I'm really liking what I'm doing. All of it is a perfect sort of confluence of wonderful things happening at the same time. That at that point I was like, okay, I can do this. This is us. When I was like, I can do this.
When you're doing an Indian movie, like Gulmohar, which is about to come out, I know music is music and music is universal, but in this case, there is, I guess, a change in instrumentation, and it's very, you could tell that it's an Indian music thing. Did your
Mhm.
process change knowing that your audience is going to be more Indian than American?
No, I mean, I just the process changed based on what the film was. Like this is a family drama set
Hmm.
in India, and so in Delhi, um and and there is something that is that is intrinsic to that environment that needs to find its way into the music. And it's like there's sounds from the street, there's sounds from the home, there's sounds of what's playing on the vinyl, there's sounds, whatever it is, right? There's stuff. And so it felt responsible to bring that sound in. Whereas like a lot of how I wrote it was on piano or guitar, or on things that I normally write on. And then the melodies also had this very sort of like SD Berman, RD Berman-esque thing to them, which is where a lot of my influence comes from. And so it felt, um, like for me, it's a dream. I was like, okay, we're gonna go RD, like an RD Berman-esque type of score. Then I'm gonna use the Chennai Orchestra to play, and I'm gonna work with the guys that played on those old records. And
Wow. It's like a
and so
full circle moment for you.
yeah, it was really, really cool. Um, so yeah, but there's a good healthy mix of sort of like the Western sort of approach of how I normally write. Mine's not really Western. I don't know what it is. It's something global, somewhere in between. And then, you know, and then even the Indian instrumentation we used, it was like it wasn't like tablas, for example. It was like, I use like guttam or like other like little quirkier percussion things that you don't always hear. And they're not playing the parts that you would normally hear them play either.
Hmm.
It's like, it's just sort of the way I always approach This Is Us too. Like I played all the percussion on This Is Us with my fingers on my tip of my desk, the desk that I write on, and tapping my
Wow.
fingers on the desk and recording that with a microphone and layering it and stacking it. And I was basically playing tabla parts, but with my fingers on like a wooden table. So it's like it never sounded like a tabla. So it didn't feel like, oh my God, this is fusion. It didn't feel like that. It feels global, not fusion.
So you just have songs, melodies coming in your head. You're in the shower, you're driving your kids to school, and there's a sound in your head, and you're like, if I ever get approached with a horror movie, this would be a perfect melody. Let me just knock that up on the side. Is that how it works
Yeah.
with you, your brain?
Yeah, basically. There's a
Wow.
lot of and oftentimes off of a reading a script, I hear a melody instantly. And then so for me it's just like there's a ton of like, my a ton of voice memo recordings or whatever on my phone just every day.
So how does the process work? Rahul comes to you with a script, and he's like, read this, and then he films it, and then you watch the movie, and then you put your music in, or is he making the movie while you're making the movie? Or do you make the movie music first, kind of, and then he kind of sets the film tone to that scene, to that song? And or do you guys come together and kind of figure out how to do this?
Good question. I mean, and when it comes to the score, that's something that I wrote after I started seeing the picture. But the songs are things that we had written before they filmed.
Okay. The
So it's because
songs
some of the
play a
songs,
part in the story.
yeah, because there's people singing some of the songs too.
Yeah, yeah.
And so some of that needed to be pre-written. And and then the score I just wrote as I saw a picture. He would send me like a cut, and I'd be like, I don't want to like just like sometimes they put what's called temp music in the cut, where he'll like put placeholder music in places, and I have to go replace it. But I was just like, I don't want to hear any of the temp music. Let's just watch it dry, we call it. And so I watched it dry, no music. And then you
Hmm.
feel it. You start playing along with it and you start noodling along. My first pass of watching it all the way down, I have the picture and I'm recording my Pro Tools is just recording as I'm watching it down for the first time. And I have a mic on my guitar, a mic on my piano, and I'm just like jumping back and forth and just playing. And so then the first performance of the score is there. It's just like me noodling for the very first time, just responding. And then inevitably in that, I go back and listen. I'm like, oh, that was good. That was not good. I'm going to make that into something, so you find something. That first watch is always key for me.
The opening scene of a movie, the opening music, how serious is that? Like, how important is that? Because that's the mood that the audience, gets into.
It's the most important part of the film. It sets the entire mood. It's like, okay, in that first 3 minutes, it's like, I got the tone of this film. I know what this is. I know what I'm getting into now. I
Wow.
know if it's the drama, I know if it's comedy, I know if it's like cheesy, I know if it's elevated. It's all of it, and you want it to be elevated.
It looks like it's dark outside for you, and it's 2 in the morning here. So let's wrap this up.
Yeah. So, so
What
nice to meet you, man.
It
Yeah.
was nice to meet you too. Let me just ask one last question. What do you think of the music today? What do you think?
Music from where?
Music from in America. Drake, The Weeknd, Kings of Leon. I mean, that's actually not today anymore.
Yeah, it's
What's
not
today? I
there.
mean,
I like the weekend. I do like the weekend a lot. I'm not a Kings of Leon guy, but weekend I like. Um, I think there's good stuff. I mean, I don't know how today. I think Frank Ocean's great.
Frank Ocean is amazing. Los
I
Angeles.
I think there's like some incredible. I think Anderson Paak is great. I think there's just a lot of great, interesting artists, amazing artists. Um, and the reason why they're good is because like they don't sound like everybody else. So, and I think that's the key. There's always going to be in every generation, no matter how, no matter how much music goes downhill collectively, there's always
Yeah.
people that break from the mold, that do something interesting, that you're like, okay, that gives me hope. That gives me like faith that music is going to be fine. There's always crappy artists, but there's always some really good ones that just shine.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. Can't
Yeah,
wait to
man.
see more music coming from you.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
Take care.